All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD 1000 Web Development Technologies course, I've been creating a series of video presentations based on the Mozilla Developer Network Learn Web Development series. I'm up to the tools and testing. Just so you can see this, I mentioned this earlier, but on the introduction, or on, I'm sorry, let's see, where is it? The client-side web development tools, there were 6 sections. I only went through the first 4. All right, so we're right here under the client-side frameworks overview. As it says, we begin our look at frameworks with a general overview in the area, looking at a brief history of JavaScript and frameworks, why they exist, why you would use them, in other words, what they give us, and how to start thinking about choosing a framework to learn. And there are quite a few. All right. So when you look at this, the first thing to notice is JavaScript is now about 25 years old. As it said, it added occasional interactivity and excitement to the web. But really, when JavaScript first came out, it was thought of as being a tool, was basically used as a tool on the client side only. So it was one that web developers used. As it says, they wrote tools to solve problems they faced. All right. And as time went on, they would package a lot of these things into libraries that they could share with others, or that they could share between, a lot of, not only with other people, but between their own projects. Now JavaScript, as it says, is an essential part of the web, used on approximately 95% of all websites. All right. It says, users write papers, manage budgets, do just about anything that and use JavaScript to do this. The web allows us to do things that used to be possible, not used to be possible, basically using the web. These more modern, complex, interactive websites are also known as web apps. The advent of JavaScript frameworks has made it much easier to develop these applications. A framework, as mentioned here, is a library that offers opinions about how the software gets built. All right. So, it's a framework. It's a way that helps you lay out what it is you're working on in the best way possible. All right. It says these opinions allow for predictability and homogeneity in an application. Predictability allows the software to scale to an enormous size and still be maintainable. Predictability and maintainability are essential for the health and longevity of software. JavaScript frameworks, as it says, power much of the software on today's web. All right. And it says, for example, what we're reading right now, the Mozilla Developer Network web docs, uses the React DOM framework to power its front end. So there are many frameworks out there, but they want to talk first about the big 4. Ember, which, as they mentioned, is 10 years old, which we are not going to go over at all, is an older framework that has less users than more modern alternatives such as React and Vue, but still, since it's been out there one of the longest, all right, there are still people who have used it and will continue to use it. Here's a link if you want to use more. Now, with Angular and React, there's a lot of talk, and really Vue too, with these 3, over which one is the best. Well, the decision has been made here at Rankin that we're going to use React, which probably is the best alternative right now. But Angular, as they mentioned, is another open source web application framework led by the Angular team at Google. All right, it says it was officially released now about 5 years ago. It's a component-based framework that uses declarative HTML templates. At build time, transparently to developers, the framework's compiler translates the templates into optimized JavaScript instructions. Angular uses TypeScript. And here's a link. So there was the link for learning Ember. Here is the link for learning Angular. Vue, as it says, again, now it's about maybe a little bit older than Angular, about 7 years old. And as they mentioned, it's the youngest of the big 4, but it's recently received an uptick in popularity. Again, it extends HTML with some of its own code. Other than that, it relies on modern JavaScript, and there's a link for learning Vue. All right. Now, this Start Learning React, I will click on that and open that in a new link. Again, Notice Facebook is the one that 8 years ago released React. It says by this point, it had already been using React to solve many of its internal problems. It's not technically a framework, it's a library for rendering components used in combinations with other libraries, all right, to help you allow you to make web applications. Because React and React DOM are often used together, React is colloquially understood as a JavaScript framework, okay? And it says it uses an HTML-like syntax known as JSX. So if I click on this, this is their getting started with React, all right? And this is from Mozilla. You can also go out, if you'd care to, how about this? Learn React. And you'll notice you can go out to reactjs.org. If you go through this, there is a tutorial in here where you build literally a tic-tac-toe game. And they give you all the code for it. I've gone through this already. It's a really good way to start with your understanding or on your road to React. Speaking of which, let's see. There at least used to be this Road to React, a book called Road to React, and you could get an earlier copy of it for free. All right, another good way to start learning. All right, so why do these frameworks even exist? As it says right there, why do developers need them? It says, consider a common kind of application, a to-do list creator. It says, which we'll look at implementing using a variety of frameworks in future chapters. This application should allow users to do things like render a list of tasks, add a task, delete a task, maybe even update a task. And as it says, it must do this while reliably tracking and updating the data underlying the application. In software development, as it says, this is known as the data has to be in what's referred to as a consistent state. All right. It says each of the things that we want to do is theoretically simple in isolation. We want to be able to iterate over our list to render it. We want to be able to add a new to-do task. We want to be able to edit it, current to-do task, delete a to-do task, etc. And it says when we remember that the application has to do all these things, all right, some cracks start to show. The problem is every time we change the application state, we may need to update the user interface to match. All right. It says we can examine the difficulty of this problem by looking at just one feature of a to-do list, rendering a list of tasks. So here are the verbosity of DOM changes. Building HTML elements and rendering them to the browser takes a surprising amount of code. Well, it does, especially depending on the language that you're using. Let's say that our state is an array of objects that looks like this. How do we show one of these objects to the user? We want to represent each task as a list item, an HTML li element inside of a UL or unordered list. How do we do that? It says we could do it something like this. In this case, we're using the document.createElement method to make our list items, and several more lines to create the properties and the children that it needs. The 10th line, it says, references another build function, build delete button E1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right there. It follows a similar pattern to the one that we used for the list element. The button doesn't do anything yet, but later on, all right, we'll add code so that it deletes. In fact, a lot of times what you end up doing is you end up setting it up so that each time you've got a list item, it might have one button, it might have 0 buttons, it might have 1 button, or it might have 2 buttons. If it has 1 button, it'll typically be a delete button. If it has 2 buttons, it'll typically have a delete button and an edit button. But what they're saying here is, well, we've now got well over 30 lines of code just dedicated to the user interface. And at no point, as it says, do we add classes that we would need later to style our list items. So it's already getting big, and you don't want code bloat. Working directly with the DOM, as in this example, requires understanding many things about how the DOM works. We've already talked about the DOM, and you can see some of them right here. Now, none of this code, as mentioned here, directly handles user interactions. All right, if we add these features, we have to remember to upgrade the UI. JavaScript frameworks were created to make this kind of work easier. They exist to provide a better developer experience. They don't bring new powers to JavaScript. They give you easier access to things that already exist in JavaScript. All right. So it says if you want to see the examples, you can check out a working version on CodePen. And let's see if we bring that up. There it is. All right, so what needs to be done? Let's just say mow the lawn. And I click add. There's our first item. You notice it automatically too has this. If I don't want to learn some frameworks, I can just remove it. Now, a couple things. First of all, if I put nothing in there, it adds it. I might want to check for that being empty. So I'd have to check for that in my JavaScript that would basically check and say, if there's nothing in there, don't allow it to happen. Second, I might want to set it up so that rather than just deleting, I might want it to come up with an alert or something like that, or a confirm dialog would be even better that said, please click OK if you indeed want to delete this item. So this could already, just from what they're showing here, could be improved. All right. Every JavaScript framework offers a way to write user interfaces more declaratively. In other words, they allow you to write code that describes how the UI should look, and the framework makes it happen in the DOM kind of for you. The vanilla JavaScript approach to building out these new elements in repetition was difficult to understand. By contrast, the following block shows you how you would do this using Vue. It's not going to be all that different using React. All right, the ideas at least are similar. So it says this snippet reduces approximately 32 lines of code down to 6 lines. All right, so thanks to Vue, it says there, if we didn't have to write our own functions for building the UI, the framework handled it for us. And that's the main idea behind these frameworks. It says it's possible to do things similar to this using vanilla JavaScript. So in other words, not using a framework. Things like template literal strings make it easier to write this, but you're still going to have a lot of code. All right. All right, I'm at 13 minutes. I think I'm going to stop right here and pick it up under the other things framework gives us in the next video.